we are in Isaiah chapter number 4. We're not getting very far. Of course, I needed at least a year or a year and a half to walk us through this. So we're just going to go as far as we can, when we can, and enjoy it as we go. So we're in chapter 4, very long chapter, 6 verses. But it is very important. Now, you understand the division of the verses and the division of the chapters are not verbally inspired. This was a letter, this was a sermon, preached and taught in unison and put in writing. The verse and chapters were added for easier reading, easier division, and I suppose some of you have a study Bible. You not only have verse and chapters, you have outlines, and they also are not verbally inspired. So why am I telling you that? Well, because I neither can anybody else, and I sure can. Why verse 1 of chapter 4 is where it is? Because it belongs to chapter 3, and I'm going to talk about that and read about that in a little bit, and you'll see what I mean by that. So why the folks that did this like they did, I don't know. But like I say, it does not in any way affect the Word of God or the verbal inspiration. It's still right. Someone just, I don't know why they put it where they did. Isaiah, of course, the prophet, in chapter 1, he outlined the sin of the nation. Then in chapter 2 and 3 and chapter 4, verse 1, he laid out the sin of groups or individuals. He laid out the sin of the priests. He laid out the sins of the prophets. He laid out the sins of the congregation. He laid out the sins of the government officials. Just systematically, he laid out the sins. Where we are here, he laid out the sins of the ladies in the kingdom. And so the first thing I need to do, because of chapter 4, verse 1, I need to read verse 16 to the end of the chapter, and then verse 1. And when I do that on chapter 4, when I do that, you'll see clearly that verse 1 really belongs to the previous chapter. But as Isaiah works through expounding the sins of these various groups, he is now talking to the women in the nation of Israel. So beginning in verse number 16. Moreover, the Lord said, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet. Therefore the Lord will smite with the scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts. In that day the Lord will take away the bravery of the tinkling ornaments about their feet, and their calls and their round tires like the moon, the chains and the bracelets, and the mufflers, the bonnets, and the ornaments of the legs, and the headbands, and the tablets, and the earrings, and the rings, and the nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel, and the mantles, and the wimples, and the crisping pins. Good Lord, whatever all those are. The glasses, and the fine linen, and the hoods, and the veils. Neiman Marcus stuff, okay? Neiman Marcus stuff. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be a stink, and instead of a girdle rent, and instead of well-set hair baldness, and instead of a stomacher, a girdle sackcloth and burning instead of beauty. The men shall fall by the sword, and the mighty in the war, and her gates shall lament and mourn, and she, being desolate, shall sit upon the ground. And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name, to take away our reproach. In our society, singlehood is preferred to later age. In the life of the Jewish ladies, singlehood and childlessness was considered a great reproach and a judgment of God. So getting married in the Jewish world was extremely, extremely important and thought extremely highly. Now, I'm going to do something I've not done here in 3 years. I'm going to read you something, word for word. Won't take long. About a couple hours. No. I really thought I would just read it until I could pretty much get it the way Matthew Henry had it. But the more I read it, the more I thought, no, because so much of it's in Old English. But I want you to listen to his commentary on what I just read. And folks, it's dynamite. Now, you know I would not come up and read something out of a book to you. But this is absolute dynamite. And I'll tell you why personally I think it's dynamite. The behavior that I just read to you of the ladies of Judah, that's a lot of the behavior of the modern women in America. I'm sorry, it really is. So bear with me while I break protocol and do something I've never done. The prophet's business was to show all sorts of people what they had contributed to the national guilt and what share they must expect in the national judgment that was coming. Here he reproves and warns the daughters of Zion, the women in the kingdom. The sin charged upon the daughters of Zion, 2 things here they are indicted for: haughtiness and wantonness. Proud, haughtiness, cocky, arrogant, and wantonness. Cast off all shows of decency and morale. They discovered the disposition of their mind by their gait and gesture. In other words, their dress and their mannerisms showed what they were on the inside. They're haughty, for they walk with stretched forth necks, that they may seem tall. Their eyes are wanton, deceiving. They affect a formal, starched way of going, mincing, or nicely tripping like a well-trained horse. They make a tinkling with their feet. Little bells on their shoes. These were the daughters of Zion who should have behaved with a gravity that becomes women professing godliness. We get to the point in America where it's not even recommended to be ladylike. Walk like a lady, talk like a lady, dress like a lady. I mean, they even come to church dressed like slobs now. Can I be blunt? The punishment threatened for this sin, and they answer the sin as face answers to face in a glass. They walk with stretched forth necks, but God will smite with the scab the crown of the head, which will make them ashamed to show their heads, being obliged to cut off their hair. They cared not what they laid out in great variety of fine clothes, but God will reduce them to such poverty and distress that they shall have They shall not have clothes sufficient to cover their nakedness. They were extremely proud of their ornaments, but God will strip them of those ornaments. When their houses shall be plundered, their treasures rifled, they themselves led into captivity. It's not at all material to inquire what sort of ornaments these were. Fashions alter, and so do the names of them. Many of these things we may suppose were ridiculous, and they had not been in fashion, would have been hooted at. I think the great illustration, I cannot imagine somebody with men with earrings and women or men with gold stuff in their nose. When I was a kid, they'd have been laughed out of the church, they'd have been laughed out of school. Well, they'd have been told to go home and get rid of it or not come back. But today it's fashionable. You ask somebody, what are you doing with that thing? Well, it's the style. Those things that were decent and convenient, as the linen, the hoods and the veils, needed not to be provided for in such abundance and variety. That struck me. When I was a kid, the average family lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. It didn't matter if there were 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 kids. There was room for everybody and their clothes. Now we live in houses 3-4 times that big, and we still have to have a U-rental outfit to store our stuff. Well, I think we're nuts on materialism. Sorry. I'm leaving anyway, so if I make somebody mad, so be it. But let me tell you this, if you've got an overabundance of so much stuff that you got to store it somewhere, that's not why God gave it to you. If you got more than you need, God gave it. If you have more than you need, God gave it to you to help somebody. Now, I'm not against y'all having stuff. I'm not against anybody having nice stuff. But surely any sane, thinking human being would know we have gone way over. All right. They were very nice about their clothes, but God would make those bodies of theirs a reproach and a burden to them. Instead of sweet smell, those tablets or boxes of perfumes, houses of soul or breath are there called. There shall be stink, garments grown filthy with being long worn. Instead of a rich embroidered girdle used to make the clothes sit tight, there would be a rent. Old rotten clothes rent into rags. Instead of a well-set hair, there would be baldness, the hair being plucked off or shaven, as was usual in times of great affliction or in great servitude. Instead of a stomacher or sash, there shall be girding of sackcloth, in token of deep humiliation and burning instead of beauty. Those that had a good complexion when they were carried into captivity shall be tanned and sunburned. The best faces are soonest injured by the weather. From all this let us learn not to affect that which is gay and costly. Don't shoot the messenger. Well, I got a message for you. If you're a real honest to goodness, born-again believer, you should live modestly in this world. You don't belong in the fancy, rich, gay society. It's not a good testimony. There shall be none to be charmed by them. Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty men in war, and when Zion's guards are cut off, no marvel that Zion's gates lament and mourn. The city itself, being desolate, shall sit upon the ground like a disconsolate widow. Now, let me read this verse again. And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we shall eat our own bread, wear our own apparel, only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. Here we have the effect and consequences of that great slaughter of men. Providence is so wisely ordered that on an average of years, plural put together, there's nearly an equal number of males and females born into the world. Yet, through the devastations made by war, there should scarcely be one man in 7 left alive. As there are deaths attending to the bringing forth of children, which are peculiar to women, there are deaths peculiar to men. Those by the sword perhaps devour more than childbed does. It is foretold that there should be 7 women to 1 man by reason of scarcity of men, whereas men orderly make their court to the women shall now take hold of men. That's happening today. All rules of courtship that were normal in your youth and my youth have all gone out the window. The women are asking men for dates. The women are asking the men to marry them. The women now want to get married and keep their own name, or they want the man's name in the middle and their name at the end. It's called rebellion against God's authority. You know what that is, don't you? 7 should now take hold of the men. 7 should now by consent become the wives of 1 man, and that whereas by the law the husband was obliged to provide for food and raiment to his wife, these women will be bound to support themselves. I kind of getting out on a little thin ice here, but something else that I just find it strange being raised how I was raised. The men now stay home and take care of the kids, and the women go and get the job. I know I just touched somebody right here, right now. I didn't mean to, but it's still the truth. I don't have to say anything to please y'all, but I do have to say what the Lord wants me to say according to His Word. Man makes a living, if possible. I understand in our society there are challenges, but if possible, the lady stays home and takes care of the kids. Nobody can raise men. We make lousy wives. And ladies, you make lousy husbands. If the men will do what God told them to do, and if the ladies will do what God told them to do, kids will come out all right. I'm not putting anybody down. I know some of you are going through terrible challenges with children and grandchildren. My heart aches for y'all. I understand that. I'm just trying to remind us what God's standard is here, okay? That's all I'm trying to do. And the man that court, and the man they court shall be at no expense, only they desire to be called his wives, plural, to take away the reproach of a single life. They are willing to be wives upon any terms. I'm glad I'm at the age where I don't do weddings anymore. Because I've wondered so many times when I was young, when I was doing a lot of weddings, because normally a pastor will have within 7 years of his age, this will be the age of the congregation. That's normal. So when I was young, I had a lot of young people. I did a lot of weddings. Now I'm old. I don't do weddings anymore. By the way, I'm really glad I don't do weddings anymore. Mother-in-laws could be a pain. Yes, I did. And sometimes these young ladies, when I'm visiting with them and the men to give them, and I'm thinking to myself, what in the world? Is she that desperate? What does she see in that bum? Now I'm saying that to myself, okay? Seriously, do you see what kind of trouble our society is in? Do you see it? You know, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm trying to be realistic about the age in which the world that we now live in. All their care was to get husbands. And get this, modesty was forgotten, and with them the reproach of vice was nothing to the reproach of virginity. Are we there on that one? Over 40% of kids born in America today are born out of wedlock. And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread, wear our own apparel, and let us be called by the name to take away our reproach. Now, in chapter 4, verse 2 through 6, is now a major turn from present to future. So let's read verse 2 through 6. In that day, remember what in that day is? It's always prophecy for the future. By the way, verse 2 to 6 has not yet happened. Today, even though this was written 2,500 years ago, 2,600 years ago, this has not yet happened, but it will. And there were two tokens of this under Hezekiah and under Asa. Those two kings were godly men for a while who led the nation right and brought some measure of relief to the nation. But strictly speaking, in that day is yet future, even today. In that day shall the branch, that's the Lord, of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped out of Israel. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem. Remember, at the end time, the Bible is very clear. Had the Lord not elected a remnant who would survive the Great Tribulation no matter what, there wouldn't have been a Jew left on planet Earth. That's plainly what it says. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning, judgment must come. Burning, fire. Anything that will burn will burn. Only the pure will be left. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flame of fire by night. For upon all the glory shall be a defense. And there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and for cover from the storm and rain. There are four things in these two verses. It is a messianic prophecy for the future. There are four things. Number one, it will be a time of the righteous branch. Verse 2 again. And in the day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. Peace will not come to earth. Peace and prosperity, which is what everybody's looking for, will not come until Jesus Christ comes back to earth. Then you'll have permanent peace. Then you will have permanent prosperity. Number 2, verse 3, there will be a holy seed. You know, if Satan had his way, he'd kill every Christian on planet earth. You understand that? Walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. If he had his way about it, God will not let that happen. Jesus said there'll always be a church until he comes back. And he didn't mean a building, he meant believers. Verse 3, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy, every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem. There will be believers in the tribulation. There will be believers who will survive the tribulation. There will be believers for the coming reign of the Lord Jesus Christ. Then the third thing you see here is the reformation of the church. Verse number 4. Now, I'm not talking about a denomination. I'm not talking about a building. I'm not talking about a fellowship. I'm talking about true believers here. Because the church is made up of born again, baptized believers coming out of their homes, coming together to meet in one place to worship and praise the Lord Jesus Christ and serve Him. That's verse 4. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. 1 Peter, I think it's 4:1. Judgment must begin at the house of God. The reformation of the church. The church in 2,000 years has really taken some missteps. Has really moved from the standard and let down the bar and the standard in a lot of areas. The Lord will fix that. And there will be no perfect church life till Jesus comes, folks, okay? We're all sinners saved by grace. We have to love each other like Jesus loved us. And when he saved me, I was a mess. And I don't imagine any of us were model citizens too much. And so that's how we love people. Nobody else is perfect either, but we love each other because we are what we are, but by the grace of God. And then divine protection, verse 5 and 6 is the fourth thing. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon our assemblies a cloud and smoke by day and shining of a flame of fire by night. For upon all the glory shall be a defense, and there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat, for a place of refuge and for cover from the storm and from the rain. Will there be weather in the millennium? Yes. Yeah. There will be weather in the 1,000-year millennium. Protection. This is a throwback to when the Lord led the children of Israel out of Egypt through the wilderness, and we are now in our wilderness, this old world, and the Lord kept them by a cloud in the daytime, by fire at night. And there will be a special protection and caring for and prosperity for us in the millennium. We are cared for now, but not like we will be then. There will be special protection and provision and care for individual believers. There will be, according to these two verses, special protection and care for Christian homes. And there will be special protection for Christian churches in the millennium. Now, let me make a very quick practical application for us, and I want you to turn to John chapter number 15. How does all that affect us today? Well, John chapter 15 talks about branches. John chapter number 15. How are we to live in these days in a sinful world where Satan is after us and we sometimes suffer? John 15:1, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me, the Lord is the vine, the Father is the husbandman, the believer is the branch. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye except ye abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abideth me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered. And men gather them and cast them into the fire, and there burn. If ye abide in me, my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit. So shall ye be my disciples. The practical application for you and I in today's world is simply this. If you're a Christian, stay close to the Lord. Stay in the Word. Keep praying. Stay under the spiritual umbrella of the Lord. Abide under the shadow of the Almighty. So, and you know, in those 6 verses, there is so much. We could, each one of those verses, verse 2 to 6, we could go to a dozen verses on each other verse in other places to elaborate, but that wasn't the scope of things this morning. Israel needed to come back to the Lord. The America needs to come back to the Lord. We need to stay close to the Lord, and God has given us a way to do that. If we'll stay close to Him, like when the storm comes, the little chicks run under the wings of their mother. So when the storm comes in our life, be close to the Lord. He will protect you. Amen? All right. I think that's where I will stop. All right. Well, thank y'all for coming back this afternoon. It means a lot. I appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow. How many of you could take the day off and stay home? And for some of you, you're going to do that like you do every other day. Amen? But I hope you have a good day tomorrow. If you get to spend a little time with family, enjoy it. Come back Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Brother Mike will be doing the lesson Wednesday night. I am going to take about 40 teachers' children somewhere out of town. I think it's Waco. And there is a possibility, this will be the first time I've ever done this. I've missed some when I take trips to New Mexico, but other than that, I've never missed, unless I was sick one time on Wednesday night. But this time I'm going to, if I miss all, I may not, but if I miss, it'll just be because I flat couldn't get back from a trip. So I hope y'all decide you need to hear from Mike. Amen. Come on, encourage him. Say amen. Amen. So there you go. You're hooked, boy. No, I didn't have to coach very hard. So we'll see y'all, Lord willing, Wednesday night. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. This is the last week before we all go to camp. So please pray, pray, pray. This should be a wonderful experience in the life of everybody that goes. Amen? All right, let's stand. With every head bowed and every eye closed, I want to ask Brother Muntz